better to fight and fall than to live without hope.
If you go back to, take one, it's as old as Bretton Woods, literally. The original Bretton Woods design put the emphasis for adjustment on the deficit countries. The US was at that point the world's surplus country. That obviously turned round, and it's interesting. One of the most fascinating, I read quite a lot of books, so I think it's good, but it's fascinating to go back and read the whole story about the Nixon 1971 period, when obviously the Bretton Woods, the gold dollar link was broken, and the number of parallels to today in terms of the issues, including things like the burden of defense spending in Europe. But this question of, and that was the point at which the US was in a sense switching from being the surplus country to the deficit country. But I think we've got to get back to this question about how we get symmetrical adjustment, responsibilities and, and in a sense commitments within that system. But of course, there's another thing I would emphasize in today's world is, of course, I could say this, I'm not a politician, of course, taking those sorts of decisions in international organizations has to translate back into the domestic environment, and that's tough.
Absolutely.
We've both been in this world, it's a very tough thing to do, and that's again been an issue that's run throughout the Bretton Woods, the life of the Bretton Woods. And then the
United States was once the largest creditor nation. This is why the Bretton Woods system was set up and the US dollar at the center of the Bretton Woods system. Fast forward to today, and we're the largest debtor nation. So this is why Andrew Bailey, the Bank of England's governor, is saying that there needs to be symmetry. We need to realign this system for it to make sense. Now think about what he said. He said that this was going to have to be agreed on in the international community and then accepted domestically. Triffin's dilemma is an economic paradox that is very well known. Every single one of these people know about Triffin's dilemma. What he's saying is key, is that he's not a politician, so he could say that. Who could get the masses excited about losing the reserve currency? Make America great again. The antithesis of the New World Order, but in reality, it's the old world order.
In that there is tribalistic culture in the country. There are news media organizations that are chanting right alongside of him. There's a very large group of people in the country that you can't even argue facts with. They think we're playing 4D chess and America has all the cards when the Chinese know we don't have half the cards that the other Americans think. And so there could be a situation here where he causes such a crisis that the Americans typically lean on their president when they're in such a big crisis. Now, he's causing the crisis, so maybe they'll turn on him. But, when there's a war, go look at Bush's approval rating. Look at Bush 1's approval ratings, George Herbert Walker Bush. Look at George W. Bush. So I could be wrong. There's a crisis afoot. We're entering into a possibly steep recession if this nonsense doesn't get reversed. And you could see a perversity of galvanization towards him as a result of the crisis.
Reserve currencies come and go, and it's very common for reserve currencies to go as the debts and deficits become unmanageable. And to prove my point, Spain lost their reserve currency from excessive military spending. And this was the start of the 30-year war shortly after. In the Netherlands, after the Netherlands lost their reserve currency status, the Anglo-Dutch Wars preceded that. France lost their reserve currency, and it started the French Revolution as well as the Napoleonic Wars. In the UK, the costs of World War I and World War II ushered in the Bretton Woods Agreement. It's been relatively peaceful under the Trump administration. However, it is very common for there to be conflict when these debt crises surface.
Our old relationship with the United States, a relationship based on steadily increasing integration, is over. The system of open global trade anchored by the United States, a system that Canada has relied on since the Second World War, a system that, while not perfect, has helped deliver prosperity for a country for decades, is over.
The entire world is recalibrating. There is a lot of distrust in the international stage. And this is how trustless technologies are going to bridge the gap. Trustless technologies will allow international trade to take place.
You know, bonds bought in auctions and government bond markets these days, and how it's changed since the financial crisis. In all our cases, you see that basically the non-bank fund sector has gone like this,
yes,
and the dealer banks have gone basically like this.
Yes.
So you've had this huge growth of the non-bank world. You've got a lot of leverage in there, I mean, one of the things we've all been watching for the last, weeks is, to what extent we're seeing, this rapid unwind of leverage in government bond markets, and is the system able to sustain that and handle it?
This is a central bank governor explaining that there is a lot of leverage, and he repeats himself that there's a lot of leverage in this system, and he's wondering if it could hold up.
It's government that's looking for protecting the strength of the dollar, but also finding more customers for the debt that we're running as a country. Stablecoin issuers are a very relevant part of that equation in terms of how to solve the issue that we're facing as a public policy dilemma. And it's interesting to see policymakers, Democrats and Republicans, now understand that it's not just a matter of kind of a novelty. It's becoming a central part of the financial system, and they need to create a clear federal framework to deal with a lot of things that Carol legitimately has raised.
Yeah, and then there's a systemic risk issue.
In these uncertain times, we should see bond yields decrease, but that's not what we're seeing. And the reason for that is because of the tariffs. Stablecoins are a new avenue to soak up treasuries, and this is very advantageous for the Trump administration to impose more tariffs. It's a way for the U.S. to finance more and more debt.
Two, we have recognized that quite a number of countries, including large economies like India, are very concerned about their monetary policy sovereignty. They are concerned that, say, dollar stablecoin can invade their policy space and then push the rupiah into a tough place.
This is called spillover effects, and it is one of the central bankers' main concerns with stable coins are spillover effects. In my opinion, the United States wants spillover effects for there to be new consumers of U.S. debt. And I think that the Mar-a-Lago Accord is going to address these concerns and try to figure out ways to prevent spillover from taking place.
A Hidden Road was started in 2018 by this guy, Mark Ash. He was an exec at, who's the guy that SAC Capital, Point 72. He's an exec from Point 72. Set up the shop in like global shop, Netherlands, UK. I think they're actually headquartered in the BVI. Shout out to Nick Carter. I think they backed them. They led the first round in 2018. Basically, they are an institutional prime brokerage firm, right? So they do clearing, financing. They clear more than $3 trillion annually across markets.
Not just crypto?
Not just crypto. So they actually started as an FX firm and then expanded into crypto. 300 institutional clients. Everyone from like Wintermute to Virtu trades on them.
Oh.
And they're a massive, massive, massive clearinghouse. They don't do any prop trading in-house. Very they promote like conflict-free, very tech-forward. I actually met with one of the founders the other day. A phenomenal, phenomenal firm. And yeah, so they clear like FX, equities, commodities, digital assets, crypto, fixed income, cross-margining capabilities across all of those. Massive firm. They just got bought by Ripple. Just bought them for $1.25 billion.
So what's going inside of Braz?
Hidden Road is one of the largest clearing houses, and they have over 300 institutional clients utilizing their clearinghouse to settle transactions.
Yeah, I mean, we did this episode that you weren't on with Charlie Noise from Paradigm,
Right.
and BAM, who just raised for Mesh. They just raised 82 million from Paradigm, and Stablecoin Clearinghouse. And I said, what are you seeing that I'm not seeing? And he said, don't sleep on RLUSD. Don't sleep on Ripple stablecoin.
And look, and we talked about that. What
Paradigm is a large venture capitalist in the Web3 world, and they certainly have the inside scoop. They're saying don't sleep on RLUSD. It is important to note that RLUSD has a side chain that is EVM, Ethereum Virtual Machine, so it can handle all smart contracts or anything that is set up for Ethereum, and it could talk back to the XRP ledger.
He not just in crypto, he might go down as one of the best best evangelists.
But just think about what we're saying. A year ago, I would have been like ragging on Ripple and ragging on. This tells me that they're serious. This is a
they might go and become bigger than Ethereum.
Blockworks has a lot of clout within the industry, and these guys have been historically very bearish, to say the least, on XRP, and you can see that they've changed their minds.
Let me tell you why this Ripple acquisition is so interesting. So they're clearing $3 trillion annually. What database are they using to clear that? I don't know, either like Solana or Ethereum or an L2 or traditional databases or MongoDB or whatever. They're going to move that all onto the XRP ledger, and they're going to clear those trades in RLUSD. And if you think about why Tether and USDC, the real usage of stablecoins right now is a clearing mechanism for trading houses. Now there's some like real world adoption, stuff like that in emerging markets with Tether, but it's really just clearing and settling. And yeah, I mean, they're buying a platform that can then serve up their own stablecoin, and look at Circle and Coinbase and Tether's revenues. This thing's going to pay for itself in a few years.
Using the XRP ledger to tokenize a lot of the assets and liabilities internally on Hidden Road, as well as taking cross-border payments and convert them to RLUSD, is a Trojan horse, to say the least. As more of these firms are swallowed by the crypto industry, we're going to see their infrastructure get stripped out and replaced with crypto rails. And sooner or later, all assets will be tokenized without anyone even realizing it.
How do we connect different choices? How can we ensure interoperability in this more diverse world? We see our role in being in responding to demand from members, but also engaging with others, with standard setters, engaging with BIS that has advanced a lot on innovation, with the Financial Stability Board, so we can collectively come up with a good pathway. Technology is very valuable. I think digital money is here. Even if we want to close this, genie is out.
The genie is out of the bottle, and regardless of some type of international agreement to contain spillover effects, there's really no way to stop open, public, decentralized rails.
Exactly. No, we've got the IMF and the GM and the G20 coming up in the next few days, and I expect to see a lot more chaos or kaleidoscope headlines coming out of that. And every single institution that is a legacy part of the liberal world order is going to find itself dismantled or reassembled with a different mission statement. Because unless you have a sea change in America, and you're not going to get a sea change in America, everything else will have to pivot around it. I mean, even the United Nations. What happens if the US stops funding the UN? Okay, maybe everybody else dips their hand in their pocket. It's not that much money. But again, if you read history, how much is this like the League of Nations in the 1920s? If the US leaves, you've got Europe, and Canada and Australia and New Zealand who will be clinging to it, saying, we're liberal world order. And yet the overwhelming majority of other countries in it are not liberal in any way, shape, or form. And they would be the one guiding it. So effectively, that would be a fig leaf to a global institution, which would be reflecting voices which have nothing in common with the original kind of liberal Western universal human rights interpretation and spirit of its founding. That's just one example. But every metric you look at can fall into the same camp, whether it's interest rates, whether it's the stock market, whether it's the yield curve, whether it's commodity prices. Everything will be dragged into this.
These international groups are going to be dismantled and reassembled with different mission statements, and a lot of these groups can be completely replaced with DAOs.
Our model is laissez-faire. If you're going to do nothing, at least do no harm. And it's not surprising that the dollar is the reigning currency in the age of the internet. But it would be helpful to actually have federal rules so that companies like mine don't face the rest of the world and have dollars more regulated in Europe or elsewhere around the world than we have here in the United States. But that's the whole function of this activity. And I think Sir John Cunliffe, formerly with the Bank of England, said, the firms that survive these, quote, crypto winters and blowups may very well be the Amazons of the future. And I think part of what we all should push for is that future is much more distributed. Ajay Banga said recently at the Economic Club that people are everywhere, but opportunity is not evenly distributed. For the first time, these technologies actually allow us to envision a much more competitive and participatory financial system than the one we have today. And I think for that alone, we ought to encourage the innovation from an opportunity-based lens rather than a risk-based lens.
Every bear market, we see coins get picked off. We see them drop down the market cap list. Dash was once one of the top 15 coins. Now it's probably on page 2 or 3. We're starting to see regulators look at this technology as an opportunity versus a risk. These technologies are going to open the door for greater competition, more transparency, a more robust and thriving economy.
And the second thing is international cooperation. Because, again, these are global products, global developments. So you want to have something of a level playing field. You want to make sure that the playing field is equal in different parts of the world. And you want to also limit the potential for, let's say, cross-border spillovers. That lax regulation in one part of the world creates a lot of damage in another part of the world, because that is not good for our mutual atmosphere, I can assure you, if these things happen.
It's a good plug for the Bretton Woods Committee, International Cooperation and Coordination. Thank you. Thank you all.
These economists are so focused on spillover effects that this is going to be one of the areas that they address. But what they don't realize is these technologies evolve rapidly, and we're going to see better alternatives than nation-state currencies, and there will be a direct competition between currencies of the past and currencies of the future. Free markets are ultimately in control. Nations, central banks can try to curtail it, but they can't stop it.
We had bipartisan consensus in the House and Senate, signed into law, and it got, in my judgment, watered down in the European consensus building. But not 100% of the countries in the Council of Europe voted to do it. What is that? It is, don't freeze the Russian assets, take the Russian assets.
The U.S. government is going to continue this trend of weaponizing the dollar, and this is going to one day implode the reserve currency status of the dollar. And when that happens, the tokenized system is already in place. There's no need for dollars within the tokenized world. We've heard the term reset, and it's happening before your very own eyes. This is the reset, and it's happening right now. Life isn't about finding yourself. Life is about creating yourself. Thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please take a moment to like and subscribe. If you enjoy content like this, please consider joining my Patreon or my Ghost site that accepts Stripe.